type of organization. And then finally, I would say, and we joke about this, but I said I'm the future of sports analytics as we finally find a way to measure the soft skills of athletes, coaches, and referees. So through the company that we have that is called Hive Skills, then we work with professional sports organizations, with federations, with colleges in the US, and a lot of different entities, usually working around those topics of culture and how you make sure that your players fit with this culture. Okay, from a recruiting standpoint to a managerial standpoint, but also to a development standpoint. How do you develop them to make sure that they will fit with your expectation?
All right, Yohann, I think we had a little itch at the beginning, so I just want to go over and let's introduce you again. As I said, your name is Yohann Mauger. You are a professor. I think that everyone heard that before. We are going to be discussing developing a team culture. That's our topic today. And I must repeat that this is an interesting topic for all coaches, all clubs, anyone with a team. Not necessarily have to be soccer, football, any sport. I think you bring that expertise in this area. The last time we spoke about soft skills, developing soft skills, and I think that was an interesting discussion. This, to me, will be an even more interesting topic from a coaching perspective. And I really look forward to having you really, dig deep into this topic, right? So in saying that, let us hit straight ahead. And my first question to you, what is really culture in the overall thing of being a culture? What is it, culture?
Okay, so thank you, Vin. This is great question because most of the time, like, culture is this type of concept that everybody think they know, but then, like, when it comes to time to define it, it's very blurry, and everybody gives a more different definition of the concept. So if we're going through a more academic type of approach, and sorry, I'm going to be a boring professor right now, and then I'm going to be more precise. But from an academic standpoint, it's the system of shared assumption, of shared values, of beliefs that show people, what is appropriate and what is not appropriate within a specific type of organization. So that's this big idea. But what it means in easy words, like my English is not perfect, so I love to use very easy words. So what it means in easy words is like, this is the behavior of the people. It just explains how people behave within a team or within an organization. So the more the people will be following this specific behavior, the stronger your culture is going to be. And it's never good or bad. It's just like you try to go in one direction. So to create a culture, you're trying to make sure that everybody's pulling towards the same direction. Okay, and so that's what it is. So you're trying to make sure the behavior of all of your group members will be about the same, so we can go towards the same direction. So if you're looking at my fingers right now, if we all going to the top, same behavior, it's good. But if you have one that goes to the side, then it might be tougher to go up. You know what I mean? Because it's pulling you somewhere else. And that's what this idea of culture is. It's trying to create that behavior that everybody respect and everybody follows.
It's interesting. It is very interesting, Yohann, because I happen to work in different countries. Often, I'm in my third right now, and I always say the first thing I do when I get to a country is to try to understand the culture, not just the team or the players, but just the overall culture of the country. Because I ran into that when I went to Grenada. The players, there's a culture of carnival. When it's carnival time, nothing happens, and I came into this and I had to really learn quickly, right, how to handle a situation like that. because the culture is deep and it's embedded in them. For listen, it's just like in the Caribbean. A lot of people here, when it's their birthday, they don't go to work. It means that much to them, and it's more so in other countries than in some. But I think that the understanding culture is important, and this is why I led the conversation with that question, because it's important. And I know we're going to talk about the team culture, but culture affects just about every area that you're in, isn't so?
Correct. Yes, it does. And I love the example that you're taking, because really, when you think about culture, you got to go back to what I was saying about the behavior of people. And you use that example of like the behavior would be, it's my birthday, I'm not showing up. And that's totally, it's totally fine. I mean, it's not good or bad. That's just what's happening. So now you're going to understand, like, why is that? So now you can see what are the factors that are impacting this behavior. And so you're going to have three different angles. You're going to have the individual factors. So who you are as a person will already have an impact. But then you're looking at the external factors impacting you. Like you were saying, you are someone that is moving to a different country. Then, like, now you got to adapt to those external environment of that specific country, and then that's when comes this idea of the artifacts. So the things that you can observe that then we can like list and have an impact on. So now we can adapt the behavior. So I'm going to show you a few things that can actually like have you understand a little bit more what those things can be. But it's really interesting for you to understand that it's a combination of those, like internal factors and external factors, who you are as a person and what's the environment that you're in.
Right. And I know, I just say we're going to move to team culture now, because I know we and I spoke before, and we know that you're on here today because we really want to look at how do we develop a team culture. But before we go there, Yohann, tell me what's the importance of developing a team culture. I know you're going to get into your videos, your PowerPoint, your presentation, but I would want to know, why would we want to build a team culture?
So there are different reasons, but one that is the most important is that without a team culture, it's more complicated to reach our goals. Like I said, if you don't know, if everybody doesn't act the same way, then like it's going to be tougher to go where we want to go. So in terms of goals, it's very important to do that. Then another way is it makes things easier for people to understand how to behave. So if I'm a player and if I understand the culture of the organization that I'm joining, now it's going to be easier for me to adapt. I'm not going to make any mistakes in my way of adapting. And vice versa, if I'm a coach, now if I really understand the culture, I know how I can coach each individual, because I will understand their expectation, I will understand their behavior, and so I can understand how to manage those different people on my team.
How does the coach's philosophy fits into the team culture?
So the coach philosophy relates to what we would call the assumption. So actually, it's a great segue with what I wanted to present, because the assumption is your big philosophy. From that philosophy, you're going to look at the values that you have, and then you're going to look at the at those artifacts, which are the examples of the actions. Are you okay if I share the screen to give you better examples for the people who are listening?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I can let you share a screen right away.
Okay, so I'm going to do that right now, and actually, let me do it. I'm going to pass a little bit of those, but what I really want to say is, once again, it relates to the objective of the culture is at every single level, from the club to the individual. At each level, you have culture.
1 second, you're on. Unshare your screen. Let me see if I can get it back up, because it's not showing on my side.
Huh?
If you're sharing it, just unshare a bit. Let me put it up again.
Okay. So let me stop sharing.
Just put it down, yeah. I think I'm getting what.
Okay. Do you want me to share again?
Yeah, share again. Let me just see. I think it's all right, let me yeah, okay. You back again? Let me see if it okay. You try sharing now.
Uh,
Okay, I see it now. Let me put it up for you. All right, there you go.
awesome. Thank you. So what I wanted to show it's this. When we talk about the culture of the club, it's an alignment of the actions at all the different levels. So at the club level, if you have an academy level, at any team level and individual level, to make sure that we align so then the behaviors are the same one for the entire organization. That's very important because if you don't do that, then sometimes you have what we call countercultures within your club. And sometimes you see this having like a club and then everybody behaves in one way, but then you have one coach that does one thing on his own, and then that specific team is different than the rest of the club. So it's important to keep everything in mind that we have to align and everybody has to be together. So I'm not going to go through that definition again, but what I want to show you is this. Like I said, the team culture is about the assumption. You were talking about the philosophy of the game. So let's take an example and once again, it's not good or bad. It's just this is one idea that I have. Let's say I'm a physical guy. To me, soccer is a physical game. That's my philosophy. So what it means in terms of values, it means that I value competition and aggressiveness. Kind of like, if you're looking at what's the team who is playing right now? Atletico Madrid. Atletico Madrid tend to believe in that types of values of aggressiveness and competition and team spirit and all of that thing. So then, how will you see that in terms of actions or something that you can observe? Then those artifacts, you see that those teams who value those types of things tend to have players who are a little bit more physical. Taller players, for example. They're going to emphasize on fitness coaches. So the fitness coach will be included in the staff to make sure that they are extremely fit and so they can fit with the value of the club. And then if you're very competitive, the way that the coaches and the players would be evaluated will be purely on results, on like the team record. Okay, it's not about the beauty of the game. It's not about this. It's about results because it's all about competition. And then finally, you can also look, but we could go for hours on those artifacts. But I'm just want to give you a last example. Is like in terms of resources, I don't really care about the quality of my field, because that's not what is more important to me. What's more important to me, it's mostly winning games and the competition of it. It's not about the process of creating the win. Am I making sense with that example?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So those are things that when we look at culture, like I love to go into the details and the science of the different types of actions that I have to do because those are things that we can control. And that's why
Right.
I love to talk about like how do I observe this? You actually observe the culture through what we call the resources and the capabilities. So you observe the culture in the physical resources of the club. Where do you put your money in terms of the physical resources? How are your buildings? How are your fields? What types of material you're using? Some people who are very innovative are going to use companies like mine to be like coming and using the stats to like help them in the results. You know what I mean? So those in
Yeah.
terms of physical resources, like the fields will be different. Like I talked to a friend of mine, actually was it like last week, and he was frustrated because he really valued the quality of the players and building and developing young players. He's works for an academy, and then he realizes it's like that's my job, but then the academy is not putting everything together to give us the best fields for us to develop the players. So they want us to develop the players, but then we have crappy fields. That doesn't make any sense. Or like we have buildings who are very far away from the fields. Like you have to make sure that the physical resources align with what you try to accomplish. And that's a very important thing. Another thing is the financial resources. How do you spend your money? And then that sounds like duh, but when you're talking about culture, depending on what you value and what's important to you, you gotta put the money towards what you value, what's important to your organization. And sometimes it's not what's happening. You hear so many clubs talking about, oh, we care about developing players. And then they actually don't give money to the academy. They keep all the money for the first team. It's
That's
like,
right.
so you actually not, this is not what you're doing. So it's okay. You don't have to value the academies and you don't have to value developing players. What I'm saying is then change. Tell them that like your culture is about performance of the first team, and that's totally fine with them. So other types of stuff, it's about the human resources, like how do you treat your coaches, your players, your staff? How do you recruit them? And we'll go into details around those concepts very soon, but it's really this. What do you do when comes the category about the people who are involved in this organization? Okay. Same thing for the brand image that you have. All the intangibles, like how do you treat those intangibles in terms of marketing? How do you market your club as well? It's something that is important when it comes to culture. You have to market what you value as an organization. So this is one thing. But then comes the what we call the capabilities, which are mostly the process that you're putting in place. How do you train your coaches, for example? How do you evaluate the people in the organization? How do you recruit the people to come and be a part of your organization? And those are very important because you have to align with the goals that your organization have. That's what's very important. And and,
Right.
and and I'm sure we're going to have tons of questions around this, and we can spend hours through examples of different teams. For example, we can talk about the Red Bull organization, how the Red Bulls are creating a culture that is aligned from Leipzig to Salzburg to New York to even a local team in Germany and a local team in Austria as well that work with them. So then they all align having the same resources allocated to the same types of end people. Very important.
And that will be and all those areas themselves have different cultures that they have to deal with. Also the different areas that go into Germany, the New York, different countries. I think that plays a big role. But when we look at the human resources, I like the fact that you touched on the human resources. A lot of times we might be in an organization that we keep forgetting about the players, the coaches that are integral to the entire process, but we don't take care of them and expect success in all areas. What do you take on that?
Yeah, I hear that 100%. So I'm going to take an example around players first. You have different types of vision, once again, of soccer, and this is led by the federation. So when you see the federation who train coaches, they tend to pass down a certain vision of what the sport should be. And then those coaches pass it down to the types of players that they're attracted to. So if you look at how France was developing players about 20 years ago, France was really focusing on the physicality of the game. So
Right.
then when you were looking at the players in the pro academies, those players were extremely tall, they were very physical, and that was the key element of recruiting because they believed that you can teach an athlete the technical aspect of the game, but you cannot teach a small kid to grow and become physical. That was their vision. And so then they missed players like Griezmann. Griezmann went to Spain to develop in the academy because he was not recruited by the academies in France. How funny is that? You know what I mean? It's very interesting to see that Spain had a different vision, that they thought that if the player has some soccer IQ, if he's smart, if he's technical, that's what I need. And even in some of those organizations, Real Sociedad was one of them. they did not give a position to the kids before they reach 17 years old. So
Oh.
before that, they were rotating the players in all the positions.
Mhm.
And you were not set to one specific position because they believe that you're going to develop better individuals, better athletes, and that polyvalence that you're going to have, it's going to help you in the future. So it was very interesting to see that like so many of those players in Spain have been playing and rotating in different position as kids. So this is one idea. Now, when it comes to coach, it's exactly what you're talking about. It's sometimes coaches have different expectations, um, or the expectations that they have is not aligned with the goals of the club, and that's when it becomes like extremely challenging because clubs, even if they have those beautiful vision of long term, sometimes they tend to make it short term of like we want to win, and that's all that
Mhm.
matters. Like we need to win, and then this can actually change the way that coaches are going to do their job because now they have to make sure that they get short term results instead of building in the long term. That's something that is
Mhm.
important. Or, like you were saying, you tell the coach you get a win and you don't give them any financial resources. You don't give them money to recruit, or you do not give them the physical resources. They have no balls. In some clubs, they barely have enough money to buy the balls for the players, or they barely have enough money to get the jerseys. How are you going to succeed in this environment?
Right, right, right. Those are salient points, though. You know, Johan, because we sometimes we look outside and not realizing the intricacies and what it needs to make a club or a team successful. So some of these points you're raising, really hits home. One of the things I like about it, you say that the players are not given are pigeonholed into a position until the age of 17. I think that approach is not many people that I know, not many clubs are that I know of follow that would follow that routine. Maybe they don't have the time, they don't have the resources to do that. Probably, So I think, but I think it's still something to know. I think it's something to know, right?
Yeah,
So
it's
all right,
very
so now let's.
interesting. And
Mhm.
and yeah, well, can I add one thing, Vin? Because
Go
in
ahead,
that
go ahead.
vein, like I've seen clubs that I work with that have this competitive culture, and what they do is every year they're going to keep 80% of the players and cut
Hmm.
20%. So every
Hmm.
year they say we're going to cut 20% of the players, no matter
Yes,
what's
yes.
going on. And then think about the environment that it creates in that club for the players. Like
Hmm.
like it's mandatory. We have to cut those 20% of the players. I mean, it's
Yes,
it's
yes.
just, and that's how they say that's how we develop competitiveness among our players. We're gonna make them tough by like showing them that there is a risk that they can be cut if they don't perform well.
Mm, I'm getting you there. So it just leads right into what I want to talk about, right? It leads right into it, and it's about the developing. How do we know? Let's now get to the meat of it.
Yes.
Developing a team culture. Yeah, we went through these areas already. You pointed out the physical resources, the financial resources, human resources, and all the intangibles. A lot of us don't worry about intangibles. They more worry about the human resources part of things, right? The financial resources fits right into how do we obtain, how do we go about and looking at the human resources. Some clubs fail because of lack of human resources. Some fail lack because financially they're not there. So how now? Let us get into how now do you think we should start and developing a team culture? Whose responsibility is that?
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. The first thing that you need to know is to ask those two questions. What are you trying to accomplish? And that seems so obvious, but it's most of the time what you're trying to accomplish, it's to gain a competitive advantage towards your competition. So it's
Mhm.
about your product differentiation. What are you trying to do different so then you can be successful? And then at that question, I would say it's always about like, I don't know, some clubs are about like, I'm here to win. That's what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm here to win games.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter how I'm going to try to win. Some other ones are more about, I'm in this club, I need to develop talent. That's my job, is to develop talent. Some other clubs are just here to make money,
Yes.
and once again, it's okay. That's what they want to accomplish. Some other ones are all about the club identity. I'm here to make sure the tradition goes on, etc., etc. Like, and we can go and have other types of goals. But before you start building any culture, you gotta understand, what are you trying to do? Your goal. What's your goal? And it's like a north star. You gotta follow that north star the whole time and adapt. Like I said, um, the resources, you align them together. Okay, you align those resources and capabilities towards that north pole. That's the process. So now let's get into the details of how you do that. Okay, so how you do this, it's, you gotta change stuff. So you're gonna use this method that it's called the unfreeze, change, and refreeze, meaning that you're gonna change the way that things were done in the past. Then you're gonna make the change that you want, and then you're gonna make sure that it become permanent. So you have to refreeze those behavior.
Mhm.
So what do we need to change? Most of the time, unfreezing, it's so hard within any organization. When you try to change things, it's very, very hard. So you need to have a clear plan of action. Those are the things that I want to change. You have to explain to people, why is that very important. I have to do this now because of blah blah blah. And
Mhm.
then you need to get a coalition inside. You need to get relays within your organization. I was talking to an academy, what was it, on Wednesday. I was talking to an academy, a pro team in the MLS academy on Wednesday, and we were talking with the coach about, like, build your coalition. You're trying to pass a new methodology of work. Now you're gonna find a coalition. You're gonna find some of the coaches within the academy that will agree with you. So then, when you're in a meeting and you're trying to push a new way of working, that those people are actually saying, yes, Yohann is right. We got to do things this way. And then
Mhm.
having those guys that will help you, then the other
Mhm.
coaches will follow them because they respect their co-workers or those other coaches. So you got to build this coalition. Very important to do that. And then you're gonna, like, have people involved. If it comes from the top down, it's gonna be very challenging to impose a culture.
Mhm.
Like most of the organizations that I'm working with, it's usually a new technical director who comes in and he's like, this is my vision. Now we're going to change the club. I mean, this is very hard because now you're going to impose a new way of doing things to people who have done things differently for many, many years. So you really have to build a coalition in that matter when it's top down. But then you
Mhm.
can
Mhm.
decide from the inside. I have a lot of organizations who say, for example, with national teams, when I work with national teams, most of the times you have a pool of players and you say, what will be our culture based on the pool of players we have? And now it's our job to, like, based on the players we have, to create the best environment to have them thrive. And so it comes from the other side of, like, it's coming from the players and we're building from the players that we have. So it can come on both sides. And that's what's very interesting. But once you have when you do the unfreeze, sorry for my English, then it's time to make the change, and that's what's important. And those change are back to what I was talking previously. This is when you change the resources, the capabilities, and or you change your goals if you want to. So you're going back to those. How do I reallocate the money? How do I change the physical resources? Should I change the stadium? Should I change the field? Should I change the material that I'm using on a daily basis for practice? Should I invest in new technology? Should I buy statistics, all those jackets and all those stuff for my players? Like all of those things, like, what do I need to change? Do I need to change coaches? Do I need to replace coaches? to make sure that it fits with what I want to do. So those are all the things that we're trying to do. Or do I change players? Maybe it's time to get rid of some players and get new ones. I'm actually helping a League One team in France right now for, I mean, the season is not over, but we're already preparing for next season in terms of the recruiting. And then we're trying to make sure that like the list of the players that we're targeting will fit with the culture that the new staff wants to implement. So that's very important. The change is like who do we bring in, which resources in terms of players are we bringing in that will help us actually fit with what the club wants to accomplish. So once again, like you have ways to do that. You have ways to support people in the change. You have to create those small wins on a regular basis. So what I like to do, and that's actually what we talked about with the team in the MLS this week, was he had success with one coach, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you gotta celebrate this right away. Like you have to tell everyone in the club that this coach did a great job and he had success using the new methodology that you're implementing. So this is very important because now you're gonna prove the rest of your club that that new methodology, that new behavior works. And so this is very powerful. Those small wins will be extremely powerful to push the new culture within the organization. Okay. And also eliminate the obstacles. If you want that coach to use a new method, make sure he's well trained on it. Like for example, like I was saying that team in League One in France, they want to use new technology now. They want to use stats for everything they do. But some coaches, they did not grow up in that environment. They have never used stats in the past. So for them, it's a little bit challenging. So you gotta eliminate the obstacles by creating some workshops or like trying to help them. Maybe putting an assistant coach with them for a certain period of time, so then that assistant coach can help in the process. So then the coach can be where you expect him to be in the near future.
So let me before you go on there, this is important. So in the unfreeze component,
Yes.
do you find that you have the coaches? Because I'm going to apply to say federations, associations around. You see, so you might find that, for instance, you go into a association and you actually bring in new ideas.
Yes.
Yeah, bring in new ideas. Not that your ideas are the best, but you're bringing in new ideas based on your own philosophy of coaching and what you want to achieve.
Yes.
But do you find you have people who are just opposed to change?
Yes. Yes, you will find this. You will find some people who will be opposed to change. And this is when this idea of the coalition is very important. You have to go back to, and let me go back, actually, you have to go back to this one and really explain why this change is crucial. What's going to happen if you don't change? And prove that first sense of urgency. You have to change because this is what's going to happen. And then this is when you bring data. This is when you come and you try to bring examples of this is what happened in this other federation, and that's the problem that they faced. We know this is going to happen to us. We need to change, or we're going to have the same problem. Like for example, if you're a federation and you realize that all your top teams are really focusing on the winning the games in the league, what's going to happen is they're going to recruit the best players right away, and they're going to have all the players play all the games. So now you have no room for the youth talent to come and play with the best players. So now your academies feel like there is no room for them to become professional athletes. So if you explain this to a federation, you said, okay, you're happy that your club are performing very well, but you realize that your national teams will not perform well because your young players are not exposed to that level of challenge. So you gotta give some room to those players to compete. And that's when, like, when you explain this, that's when you have like some new philosophies that come in place. Like the MLS is putting in place a new philosophy in terms of youth players. They're like motivating people to develop players by giving money to them,
Okay.
by allowing them to transfer the players and make additional money on those transfers. Now, then they also facilitating the and it's all about money. And I'm sorry to say that all the time, but like they're opening some spots in the roster, so then the youth players don't count in the envelope of the salary cap. So now you can actually bring those young players, and they will not be free because it's not free, but they don't count in your envelope, so you can use more money for more experienced players, but less experienced players, so you have room for your young ones to play. So this was a way that they had to try to push the development of youth players through the league, the Major League Soccer. But they
Okay.
had that search of urgency, and the search of urgency was the national team did not qualify for the World Cup. And that's why we were pushing. We're like, hey, the national team is bad. And then if you want to continue to be bad, then continue with your model. Continue with your model. And everybody will make fun of you because you don't qualify for the World Cup. If you want to qualify, stop sending your youth athlete to play in Division 4 in Germany. Develop your own system in the US, and then you can have them play already in the MLS at a young age. And that's what has been done. But you have to create that search of urgency and have a coalition. Have the owners of the clubs agree to invest in the academy. How do you motivate them to invest in the academy? By telling them they're going to have a return on investment. They will be able to sell the players and make money.
Agree. 100% agree.
And that's how the unfreeze stage was done. We went that way to try to motivate them in that aspect. Is that making sense? Like you have to go through
Yes,
those
yes, yes.
different stages.
Explain it. It has been explained properly for me. I mean, in a total way for me. So and you say let's go to the change and back to where you're going on, so we can
Yes.
get
So
back
like I
in the
said,
groove.
so the change is doing those things, and then you gotta keep in mind that it's all about the people as well. Like changing the people, it's very important. You gotta attract the people who fit with your culture. I am 5'6", and then I knew that like some clubs in France, I could not play for them because my style as a player did not fit with theirs. So I was not attracted to go play for them. And on the other
Right.
side, from a selection standpoint, they would not have recruited me anyway because they will select the players that fits with their vision of the sports. That's something important. But the last element that is key is attrition, meaning that people who don't feel good in an organization will leave. And that's exactly what's going on. When you make a change in the organization, you're going to lose some members because those people just don't adjust, they don't fit, and then they will leave. So that's why you got to really think about what type of people do I want to work with? What type of people do I want to have in my organization? This is extremely important to look at because like, depending on the organizations, the elements are usually around like innovation. Is that one of the aspects that you value and risk taking? Or is that more about the details? Are you paying a close attention to the details or not, comparing to a different organization? Are you more into the outcome or are you more into the process? Are you oriented towards people or are you oriented towards something else when you make a decision? So all of those types of things, the teamwork through the team organization, the level of aggressiveness, the stability of the organization, all of those things are the key elements that you're going to look when you're making your decision around the types of culture that you value. Those are very important. So this is how the change is made. You make a change based on those factors. You're actually changing the cursor in those different elements to make them align with what you want to accomplish. And once again, that's when the science come in place. Now we can measure all those elements and then be very specific on those different elements because that's what we want to have at the end. And then you're gonna refreeze, meaning you're gonna make sure that the success that you had becomes the norm for the organization. And that's when you do just like you do for kids. You have to publicize the success. You have to
Mm-hmm.
tell them good job. You have to put the good things in the newspaper. You have to
Mm-hmm.
put some stories to share the stories with the rest of the club.
Mm-hmm.
Vin has been implementing this new thing. Is team one. Or Vin has been implementing this new thing, and now he has two players who are moving to play with the professionals. Like you have to tell those things, and then you have to reward them for adopting those different behaviors. This is when you say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, then you've been changing, you're going to get a bonus. It can be a financial bonus, or it can be days off, or it can be more material, or it can be I'm going to give you an assistant, or I can give
Mm-hmm.
you, I don't know, more time to go to the field, or something. Like if you're a club and you realize that, like it was the case I grew up in Normandy in France, and it's raining all the time, and a very limited number of clubs do have indoor facilities. So sometimes they have to go to an indoor facilities and pay for an hour or 2 hours of sessions. So what you can do as a club, it can be like, I'm gonna reward you for like adapting, and then the club will pay for your team to go to the indoor facility for a certain number of hours, or whatever it is. Like you try to reward the people who have like adopted the change, and that's something that is important.
So
Okay, so
your
those are
job.
the differences between change.
Go ahead. Continue, Johan.
Now, what I want to say is that like if you want to do this, it's all about looking at this. How is the new culture aligned with your goals? So when you want to make
Mm-hmm.
those changes, you're gonna ask those two questions in your mind. Like, what is my goal number one? And then what I want to implement, is this really aligned with my goal? Is this going to make me win games if that's what I want to do? Or is this going to make me develop more players if that's what I want to accomplish? And then, of course, you always have to think, are those changes appropriate to reach my goal? So is me paying more money for a certain coach, is this going to help me reach the goal that I try to implement?
Good, 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 good. In a team setting, Johan, right? Because
Yeah.
as a coach, you can't really stand alone. And some of the areas you touched on, says it. You have to have administrators, you have to have the people around you, you have to have all the staff. How important in a team situation? Because I have coaches on here who are with teams, right? Not
Yes.
executives. They are all 90% of coaches, I imagine. How what role you think the captain that you select plays within all of this? You're
And
trying to change your culture.
it's huge because your captain will be your leader. So by being your leader, he's going to be your relay in the types of information you're passing down to the rest of the players. So when
Mm-hmm,
I was
mm-hmm,
talking about building a coalition earlier,
mm-hmm,
you have to build a coalition by onboarding that captain or onboarding those leaders with you and your vision. So you have to have those key players to understand the goals that you're trying to accomplish, agree with that, and then agree with the method that you're using. Because the changes that you're making, that's your new method. So then you need those guys to be with you because they will have an impact on the team dynamic. So if I'm going and if I'm showing a few things, I'm sorry I'm going very fast right now, and it's just
No,
something I
no,
want
that's
to show
okay.
you.
That's okay. That's okay.
When you look at this type of team dynamic, when you're within a team, you have team dynamics. So I took this one on purpose, which is one specific team that we were working with. And then in that team, we had clusters, we had different groups of players. And then you could see who interacted with who. And then, like, who was the leader for the entire team, but then who was the leader inside each of those clusters. Because as a coach, when you want to pass the information, make sure that the behavior of the entire team fits with what you want to accomplish, you want to make sure that you have those relays that will influence in a positive way all the players. But because all of those players are not all working well together, they work sometimes as silos, as little clusters. You gotta know who is the most important person within that silo, within that cluster. Then you can pass the message to that person who pass the message down. And you were talking about this idea of like you working in a different country. And yes, when you work in a different country in a team, you tend to be close to the people who speak the same language as yours. It's just normal. It's natural. It's natural. Like I'm French, and then of course, if I can be speaking French to some of my teammates, that's gonna make us closer because we're gonna have our national culture will be similar. The way we eat, the way we deal with time, the way we look at like aesthetics, our norms and our values, all of those things. That's what we grew up having as like a norm, and this is what we know. So that's going to make us like close to one another. But then you have to adapt to the new environments, and so by being together, it's easier. So when you work with those teams as a coach, it's good to know who is the leader of those different groups. So then you can talk to them.
When you talk about speaking the same language as you, we could move it out of the language per se and into where we're talking about buying into your own culture. They believe they're bought into your culture or what you're trying to achieve. So I think that sometimes we use you're speaking my language, you know. So in that context, I think that's what I would like to say as far as the captain is concerned. I just rightly say in that coalition, that is quite important, right? So what other areas, as we move forward now, we talk about team dynamic, what other areas that would affect this whole culture development?
Okay, so this is, and I'm going to go back in my slides, so I'm sorry if I'm giving you motion sickness right now, but let me just go back.
Yes.
Like when we talk the way that we actually measure culture, there is a way scientifically to measure it. And when we talk about culture, you talk about 6 pillars. Like I was saying previously, you talk about the performance mentality. In other words, you're talking about the personality of the players. You're talking about emotional intelligence. How do players understand themselves? How do they understand others? And this is key because understanding others means, do you understand the environment? And do you understand the culture of the team? Then you got to say, how do people behave? Because the behavior is by definition the culture. If people behave the same way altogether, you have a strong culture. So you need to understand the winning habits of the players. Then you need to understand the leadership and the interpersonal skills that the players have. So you need to get into details around how people speak to one another and how people receive the information. Because you want to make sure that you're using the style that will work to lead others. And you will also, you as a coach, be using the right way of communicating to each of your players. So that's very important in terms of the culture. And then you got to understand the responses to challenges, because culture is fine and it's easy when you're not facing any adversity. But what's going on when your team is facing adversity? Are they changing? Are they now using a way different culture? Now I'm changing and I'm not the same. Look at Paris, the PSG. What happened when they are winning games and when they're not winning games? And then the game against Manchester City was fascinating to see how they started to behave as individuals. You know, they were whining all the time. They were becoming extremely aggressive during the game. I mean, you see that change that was like huge in the game. So it's your job as a coach to make sure that the culture is the same when things are going right and when things are going wrong. And then finally, you're shifting towards the coachability and looking at how players can change in those matters. So those are ways that we can measure it. Actually, that's what we do in our company. Like we measure those 65 criteria to get into details. For example, we can measure the level of fighting spirit. We can measure the work ethic of the people, the emotional control, the passion, the teamwork. And those elements, they never go to bad. They're just at a certain level. So then, depending on what the teams want, then they will say, oh, I want people with more passion, or I want people with more control of who they are. Because usually, when you get a lot of passion, you tend to have issues to control those emotions. And so, like you try to get a balance between all of those different elements, and that balance that you're describing, it's actually the vision that you have for the player. It's your vision of behavior of those players. In other words, this is your culture. This is your culture. It's that simple. So you're trying to do those things, and that's very important. Same thing for, like I said, emotional intelligence, reaction to external factors, how people change. Are they taking more risk? Are they taking less risk? What are they doing when they're facing challenges? Once again, depending on your goals and your vision of the culture, you will see if that matches or not. So those are extremely important elements that we want to go through to lead to the idea of the leadership. Like you were saying about culture, you need people to push your culture towards the rest of the players. And those leaders will be extremely, extremely important. So then you can adapt your communication style, and then you can be more effective with them. So I'm gonna stop here right now before we move forward on the conversation, because I'm sure you might have some questions or something related to this way of measuring scientifically the concept of culture.
Well, I tell you what, I've had more comments than questions, saying that
Okay.
very informative, great presentation. So you're doing something right. They sometimes listen, and they might have questions at the end, but the comments I'm getting is very, 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 very positive. So
Oh, thank you.
you can continue with that, with the presentation.
Okay, so I'm going to end with the idea of leading people, because to me
Hmm.
it's very important to lead. So then we have a culture that is aligned with what we want to accomplish. So let me
Hmm.
optimize the style. So before we do this, the key element every time you're leading people, and especially when you're leading towards change, when you're trying to motivate players to do something different, then it's all about finding what motivates them. And I'm not going to go through all those theories because the boring professor in me would love that, but no. But again, you have to understand, like, what motivates Vin, what's motivates Yohann. Like, like
Yeah.
some players, just give them a bonus and they're gonna run faster. Some of the players, you have to actually like make them belong into the team. Just the fact that they belong to the team will make them happy. Like, I'm a part of a
Hmm.
team. I'm seeing my friends. I'm so happy to come and be with my friends. That's just what they need. Some other players, we need to be seen as the hero. They want to be the captain, or they want to be seen as the most important player on the field. So you have to tell them all the time, like, oh yeah, you're good, you're a good player. Like this is what some players need. It's all about image and those types of needs. So whatever the motivation is, you need to understand what it is, because even if it is the same culture, you as a coach gonna have to adapt your speech and your way of communicating to each of the players on your team, depending on what motivates them. So that's what's important. So I'm looking at those things, and I'm gonna spend 2 minutes and then ask you a question after that. But you have two ways of leading people. One way that is what we call transactional, meaning
Hmm.
you're gonna reward people, or you will punish them. And you see people, the coaches who do that all the time. Like, hey, if you win the game today, I'm gonna pay for the pizza after the game, or I'm
Hmm.
bringing all the team for ice cream. That whatever it is, that's like a reward. I had a coach when I was playing. No, a president came into the locker room, and I think we were It was before the game or after the game? No, it was before the game, and he gave us 500 euros cash. He gave like the cash in the locker room to us. And he said, if you don't win the game today, I'm taking it off. I'm gonna come back to the locker room and take it from your pocket. And so that was really like a very fun types of way of motivating based on the transactional aspect. I'm giving you a reward, that money, or I'm punishing you. Like I'm gonna take that money out of you. But for some people, you lose that game, you're gonna run. So many
Mm-hmm.
coaches do that all the time at training. Like the team who loses, they're gonna do like 10 laps or whatever it is, or they're gonna do push-ups. Like this is one way of leading. That once again, it's good or bad. I'm not here to judge, but that works. That works. Actually, the
Works for
science
some
has,
people.
yeah, but the science has proven that punishing people using transactional at the halftime of a game for soccer and basketball, that works. But it works at the short term. So you're gonna get results in the game that you're using it. But if you use it every single game, then it doesn't work anymore because people don't listen to you. And that's why
Yeah.
the transformational leadership is more powerful because it works in the long run when transactional tends to work in the short run. So if you want short
Before
term
you go on,
results, do that.
before you move on, Yohann, sorry to cut you, because I don't want to get away from this question because it has something to do with your previous presentation.
Okay.
Giba Damiano, who is actually the head coach of the US Virgin Islands senior team, asking the question: how important is it to identify introvert and extrovert within your players and staff? And the follow up to that is to get the best out of each individual. So let me repeat it. How important is to identify introvert and extroverts within your players and staff to get the best out of each individual?
So my answer is it is crucial. It is crucial to assess your players and it is crucial to assess your coaches so then you can find the best way to coach one another or to work with one another. Like it's not good or bad to be extrovert or introvert. It's not good or bad. That's just how the player is. There is no problem with that. And the goal is not to change the player if this is not an issue. If this is not blocking the player to improve, no problem. But as a coach, you want to make sure that actually you're using a style that's not going to block the player. If you're using that reward and punishment technique, so most of the time when you do this, you tend to yell a lot. So if you tend to yell a lot on players, some more introvert, sometimes they feel a little bit like threatened when people are yelling at them. So they might be scared and not trying to do anything. I'm going to give you an example. I was working with a college team in the US, and what we discovered was those players were very, very good, but they wanted to become professionals. And then they realized that if they were making one mistake, the coach was not happy and was making a substitution because you can substitute players as many times as you want in college. So those players realize that if I'm making a mistake, he's going to put me on the bench. If I'm on the bench, the scouts will not recruit me to go with the pros. So what they did, I'm not going to make any mistake on the field. That sounds like a good idea. The problem was the way to not make mistakes was to play simple and to not take any risk. By not taking any risk, the team was not winning games anymore. The players were not being efficient on the field. So the midfield, the defensive midfield, was just doing passes to the back, was not trying to find the number 10, was not trying to find the forwards. So now he's useless on the field. I mean, not totally, but it's not as important anymore. So you got to understand your coaching style has an impact on people who tend to be extroverted or introverted. And so you got to adapt. So then you get the best out of them. But to get that, you need to know who they are. And that's why those assessments are so crucial. So then you gain time. Because if you do the assessment, you're going to do it right away. If you wait, you're going to try techniques and you will see what works, what doesn't work. But then when it doesn't work, you're going to try a new technique and see if it works or not, and then a new technique, and etc. It might take you 3 months, 6 months to understand your team. And then when it's after 6 months in some leagues, the league is over. And then you get a new group of players come in, and then you have to start it again to discover the players. So it's very important to try to understand them right from the beginning, so then you can coach them in the best way possible.
Good answer there. Let me ask you. I don't know if this is a good question, but I'm going to ask it. Really, we talk about team culture, developing a team culture. Halfway through the season, you realize that maybe can we say, okay, we need to change this team culture that we have developed? Is it a fair question? Because just like philosophy, your philosophy probably changes the more you get and the more experience that you might get. In a team culture situation, would that be almost the same approach to maybe try and maybe change something in the culture of the club?
Yes, there is no problem with this. Like, once again, there is no problem, but you're going to go through the 3 phases again. So now you're going to explain why you're changing. So you're doing the unfreeze again by telling them, okay, we need to change because my method doesn't work, for example. My method doesn't work. Those are the results that we have, blah, blah, blah. Give them the search of urgency. If we don't change, we might be relegated to go play in the lower division of whatever it is. So you have to do this and then explain why you would do the new one and why the new one will be more effective. And then you bring them together. You get some relays that will help you push your new idea. And then you do the whole process again, unfreeze, make those changes that you want to make. If that's bringing new players, if this is bringing new techniques at training, if that's bringing new management style, whatever it is, you're bringing that change, and then you reward people when they do what they're supposed to do with the new culture. Is that making sense?
I say, very, very much so, very much so. I have another question from Everton that is asking you. This assessment is vital, especially. I guess he's making a comment, but I want you to. It's a comment, but something that you can address also. This assessment is vitally important. It's vital, especially when dealing with female players. Let me tell you the background. Let me tell you where Everton is coming from. Everton was the head coach with Florida International University.
Oh, okay.
So he has a lot of experience with female players. He's now back in the UK with his own company, and we want to know. So his question is coming from a position of where he has coached female players before. So he's made that assessment. How you want to address that?
Yes. So thank you very much, Everton, for this question and this comment. This comment. It's true that we tend to, but somehow it's our way of coaching to some extent. We think that like male don't pay as much attention to the mental aspect of the game than female. Or at least that female tend to be more like emotional in that aspect. I would say it is important for both. It's important for both. But because sports, it's a balance. Like performance, it's really a balance between the technical, tactical, fitness, and the mental aspect of the game. You got to make sure that those 4, you are doing well at those 4. And if for some reason you're not as good in the physical aspect, you need to be better at the mental aspect to counterbalance it. And so I understand what he's saying. Understanding the player is crucial. And it's funny, before we were thinking that, I have 30 players, there is only one coach, the 30 players should adapt to the one coach. No, that's not the way to do this. And especially nowadays with the young generation that tend to be a little bit more individualistic, like we have to adapt to them if we want to get the best out of them. And I think that's what is crucial in that matter. And then to get the best out of ourselves as well. Knowing ourselves is so important. So now we know how we operate, so we know where our limits are. And then we can avoid creating a situation that will go overboard. Like we can anticipate those things. And I like what he's saying. Like, I mean, I just helped one of those new teams, what it's called. I always forget the names of that new league. It's not the MLS, but it's the NWSL. I think that's what it's called, National Women's Soccer League. And
Yeah,
we
I
were
think so.
and we were helping one of the team to recruit. And then we were going through the same thing, like what profile do we want on the team, what types of individuals do we want, and then we were creating those roles for all the players based on their personalities, and it was extremely powerful. So I hear you, Everton. Like knowing the players is very, very important, and in the females world, it's gonna be very important.
So now I know that we have discussed developing the team culture. Can I can I say that so developing a team culture doesn't happen overnight. It's a process.
Yes, it is a process, like we said. It's a three-step process, but at the end of the day, you can see changes very, very fast. And I'm gonna show you like pretty quickly those two coaches have a way different style between Zidane, Deschamps, Mourinho, and Guardiola. They have way different style. But look at the impact when you have Deschamps and when you have Mourinho on the same player. Look at this. Look at this. The same player physically is so much different. Look at the style at Manchester United with Mourinho, who is all about, I mean, at that time was all about transactional, putting Pogba as the superstar and then putting him down, and you really playing on that image with Pogba. You the image of the club, and look at his hair, and then look at his more aggressive types of approach. Like I'm looking at the audience, and then like, are you guys saying something, or like you get a cheer for me more, whatever it was in that moment. And then you look at him with the French national team, and it was just a few months later. It's the same season, the same player, the same season. But now he's in a different culture. Now he's with the national team, and now they expect him not to be singled out as the guy that will help them win the games. Now he is the player that fits with the group. So now you're going to look exactly like the rest of the players. You're going to have to build and become the big brother. And then we want you to speak, but to speak through your aggressiveness and then come and do those speeches. And I can show you videos of how he speaks and all that type of things to try to show you the way he communicates as well. But that you can see how just shifting teams, he shifted his behavior totally. And you can see physically how different he is. Is that making sense?
Nope.
So it takes time, but at the same time, if you embrace it, it can go very fast. If you understand the goals and if you understand technically what it means. Once again, and I hope that that's the message that I passed today, to really try to understand that culture is that very broad concept, but it's actually a lot of little things that we can implement, like how you talk to people, how you look, how at what time you arrive at practice, how do you talk to one another, how do you listen to one another, how what's your level of aggressiveness when you're on the field, your level of passion, etc. Like all of those elements can be put together, and we can actually list every actions that defines the culture of an organization. So when I work with a team, like we have a list of the expected behavior for each member, for each player, for example, or for each coach. Those are the things that are expected. And then you have bonuses. Those are behaviors that if you do that, it's a bonus. It's even better. But you don't need to do that. Just do what, focus on those 10 tasks, and that will be enough. That's what we want from you.
And that's very, very interesting, Johan, that you raised that point, because a lot of people would not even focus on these two different cultures, with Pogba. They would not. And I know the video you're referring to, right? That he was in a team talk at halftime, and his attitude towards the team was different. You would never believe. I think I think the what people have of Pogba, right? When they see him in the changing room at halftime in the France game, it was a different Pogba I was seeing. I would encourage all the coaches to go online and look at that video when he was at halftime talking to a player. You can see the aggressiveness in his face when he's playing for Manchester United. The other one with France, he was encouraging the team, the crowd to support them and not him.
Yes.
But you can see definitely it's about the team. So I love that you went to that clip because it really demonstrates how, and also how professional Pogba was, that he can switch cultures. Going to the national team is a different culture. Coming to the Man U, regardless of how he was taught or programmed to behave, that it surely is a difference in this situation.
It is. So that's right. I encourage everybody to go and watch those videos as well. It's fascinating. It's fascinating, and we have this a lot even with the players we are coaching. Like you have those cases of players, for example, in academies, when you have very talented players and you see those players go play with the national team and then they come back and they're not the same anymore. They just change in
Yes.
between.
Yes.
Or they go play with the first team and then go back with the youth teams and now the player is different again. And then you have to reestablish like what is the expectation, what is the culture, and what is his role within that culture. What is his expected behavior within the group? And then
Yes.
if you move to a different group, your role will be different. Your expected behavior will be different. But we have to explain this very clearly. The problem is we don't describe it clearly to our players. We don't
Yes.
explain clearly the expectations of like, I want you to do this, and that. This is what I will evaluate you on. And then if you do this, I will reward you. And that's what the system should be based on. But unfortunately, we tend to be vague and not very clear with our expectations. So the culture is very vague. And then the players are they're doing their best. And then sometimes it doesn't work. So then they pull in different directions and the team is not moving forward toward the goal.
Well, I have a comment and I have a question, but I'm gonna pose those when you're done and we unshare the screen and we can talk to it in a better way. So when you're done, you're done right now.
Yes, I am.
All right. So it was, awesome presentation. And it speaks to an era. I'm going to do a reflection, but before I do that, Everton again made up, and you'll be able to see it this time because you're off, right? Everton make a very interesting point, right? And I tend to want to buy into it, and this is part of the branding that you're talking about when you're developing your culture. So this speaks to it very well, And players like Pogba uses the cultural change at the club because it's a business and sells shirts. I know you have to come in on this one.
I love this. Thank you so much for sharing this, because one of the work that I love to do when we work at the club level, it's to meet with the marketing people. And it's always like making sure that the marketing people align with what the technical staff is doing. Like sometimes, the marketing is trying to sell a different vision of the player than who the player really is. So then it creates some like issues in the mind of the fans. It creates some issues in the mind of the journalists who are then writing something in the newspaper that is different to what the player is on the field. So you have to have everyone aligned when you work at the club level. Make sure that this makes sense. And then you know what? You're going to sell jerseys no matter what. Like this is really something important. If you're playing a role and it's very clear who you are and what you bring to the team, you will have an audience that will be attracted by that profile. So you're gonna sell jerseys no matter what. I can promise you that. But it's true that like when you change clubs, then you have to maybe I'm changing my role and maybe I have to change my behavior to fit with the culture of this club. And some clubs, the club is more important than the individual. In some other clubs, the individuals are more important than the club. And in that way, you have to show off, you have to be different because you have to be one of those individuals that stand up.
All right. So we have G-Buck is at you again. And G-Buck says, I know you can read it, but I want to read it out just to say, what is your opinion on leaders are responsible for creating the environment that will lead to the process of creating a culture? You can read it through again yourself and address that.
So my opinion is, like I said, it can come both ways. You can decide that the culture will come from the coach or the club down to the players, or you can decide like, let's build it together. Let's have a more participative way of creating the culture and have the players, in this case, the key players, the leaders that will bring that information up and then have a conversation with the coach and be like, those are the rules that we should have. Those are the behaviors that we find good for this team. And those are the behaviors that are unacceptable. And then they decide this and they create that. And I'm a strong believer of this. But having the coach well aligned, like having those leaders talk to the coach in advance, aligning those people together, and then having the leaders go back, the coach move away, and then the leaders go talk to the rest of the team, and they build the process that they want to reach those goals. But those goals have been aligned with the leaders and the coaching staff previously, that the leaders create that environment, like Jiba is saying.
Yeah. All right. An observation, not an observation, a real compliment to your presentation. Ivan says, this is great information. So much we are able to apply to our team. Thank you.
No, thank you, Ivan, for being here with us. And if once again, if you want more, if you want to do the assessment of your players, feel free to come to our site and do it, or just reach out to me. I'll be happy to support you guys. I mean, it's so great to see people supported and being more comfortable with their players and performing better. So I'm here
And
to help.
we will get to your site just soon to come. We'll do that. And then we also have Jason Clausen says, rich content. There are ideas that I will have to implement in my program going forward.
Great, Jason. I'm excited.
It has reached a lot of people already. They're impressed. And I'm gonna dig into my coach, Jiba. That's what he wrote first. Then he realized, as the Brazilian is living in UK for so long, that's not how you spell stuff. So he changed it to stuff. He says great stuff, right? So, and it is definitely great stuff. Now, for the viewers, I would love to go back to you with this. I know your company is what I want to get into. You have, this is your company, hiveskillsiq.com, right? Tell me about this company.
So thank you for sharing this. So we might have some changes of website and things, because you know how the technical people love to make changes, but it's the same concept. So we're called Hive Skills, and the idea is to measure scientifically the mental aspect of the game. And so for any sport, so we did it for basketball, we did it for soccer, and most of the thing is, how does the science evaluate those factors? So we can, through one questionnaire that we give to the players, then we have their assessment of 65 factors. So then when you are a coach, then you can see among those 65 factors, maybe not all of them will be important to you. Once again, based on your culture, you're going to prioritize some over others. But because you're going to have all that information, you're going to be able to see, first of all, is this player fit with my team? So in terms of recruiting, it's going to help you. You're also going to be able to see, oh, this player is good, I already recruited him. How do I coach him? So by having those factors, you're going to see and you will know how to coach this player. And finally, you can compare this player with other players. And so you can measure the gaps and decide, oh, Now I can train this player on those specific factors. So if I'm a coach and I realize that some of my players are missing, for example, some aggressiveness to fit with my culture, but the other players don't. But the way you're going to communicate to those specific players, you will actually um, give specific instructions. So, on top of developing the technical and tactical and their fitness, they can also work on their mental aspect of the game. So, that's what's very important is to work on those three aspects: the assessment of people, the comparison to measure the gaps, and then the training programs to help the coaches coach the players better and optimize the performance of the players. So this is very important.
My guests are here. Just Johann's email address. As he said before, you're free to contact him by emails, and I think you should believe me. Before I'm done, I have to show you a comment here, which is quite impressive. I'm impressed that he said that too. Excellent presentation with quality information, impressive. And I am one that has bought into that. It is. I've not. This is the second time I've done one with you. We did a podcast before, which you spoke about soft skills. And that was in itself was excellent. I think maybe we have to come back and do the soft skills one on this platform too, so you can get a better feel of what you can demonstrate and also speak to it. Before you go, I like to do a little reflection on what we've done before. I would love for you to go over the unfreeze, and then the freeze, refreeze. So go through that again and let us finish up on that.
Oh, you want me to continue talking about this? I think the key element, it's really to understand before you do the unfreeze, it's to understand what I don't like or what is not working. And then going through the things that are not working that you want to change, and then understand the reasons why you need to change those things. Because if you know the reason, it's going to be easier for you to communicate that to your team and to have them and to enroll them in the process of changing. So it's something that is very important. And then to help you in this process of communicating those ideas, bring the data. People respond very well to data. So bring data to prove the reason why. If you try to explain to your soccer team why you're going to change the tactical formation for the next game, then you might bring the data and explain why the old one didn't work. So you can bring the statistics and explain to your players why you're making that change. And then this gonna be very powerful for you to do that, except of having this general idea of like, oh, we didn't play well. No, that's not enough. That's not enough. Tell them exactly what didn't work. And once again, when you're making the change, that change needs to be extremely specific so then players know what their behavior should be. And those specific characteristics that you're listing, those are the things that if they don't reach it, those are the things that you can come back and change. Again, it's kind of like a circle that you're using all the time. And that's why it's very important to have the capacity of measuring everything that you're doing with your team. So then people cannot disagree with you to some extent, and you can onboard them easily, and you can evaluate them easily, and you can lead them easily because they know exactly what is expected from them.
Yes, that's a great. And I said, your email address is here. But before I go, I would like to encourage all the listeners and all the viewers right now. I'm sure this information should not be kept to yourselves, right? So one way you can encourage people to see all this information from Yohann is to like, share, and subscribe this video. Definitely, you'll reach out to others. And it's good information. You can rewatch this again on YouTube, right? But Yohann, I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing this your vast knowledge about this topic. I think it's a very interesting topic. Based on our comments, you can tell that. But it's something that, all administrators around clubs, around national teams, around the federations should really take a look at, listen, get some of your advice, and I think it would benefit them in the long run. I know we have people on here. I mean, Jiba is a national coach, and I'm sure he's relating to all of this that we are speaking about, and will have some takeaways from it also. So I give you the last word, but not well. No, I shouldn't say I give you the last word. I have to wrap up on that and thank my viewers from coming in and all the people that have tuned in this week. We have another good one podcast coming up soon next week, and that is important for my viewers. So give me a little wrap up, and then I'll come back to them, Yohann.
I mean, I wanted to say the same thing. You stole my line. Was to first of all thank everyone for coming and listening to this presentation. And yeah, please reach out to me. Like, as you can see, I love to talk to people. I love to have conversation and exchange ideas. That's how we grow. We learn from everyone. I think like you were saying, this method works at any level. It works with the federations, it works with clubs, it works with teams, it works with teams at the pro level, at the college level, at the local level. Like, we use this with my brother in Division 17 in France. In Division 17. I mean, we're talking about, this is the same thing. We're dealing with people. And as coach, we want to have people feel comfortable. Like, you want you as a coach to be comfortable when you are with your players, but you also want your players to be comfortable with you, and understanding them and adapting your coaching style to them first of all, it works, but it also feels good. So that would be my last word for today. And thank you for having me. I'm always excited to be with you, Vin.
Yes, thanks again, man. It's really, really, really rewarding. And great information. I bet that we'll do this again for some time in the near future, where we can get you to come on and talk about some other interesting topics that I know you have as a professor. I know you have that. I think I will have one final comment. Amazing presentation. I would love to connect with you, Yohann. This method is very refreshing and encouraging. That's from Jiba, right? So I will definitely, Jiba, there's the email address on there for Yohann. So yes, I know he's very welcoming. As a matter of fact, Jiba, he will come over to US Virgin Islands anytime you're ready for him. He has already told me that, right? So we're looking forward to it again. So it is my time to say thanks for coming on. It was really a pleasure to have all you on and listen to this beautiful presentation by Yohann. Yohann, let me tell you, man, it was great having you on. And we'll talk again very soon.
Thank you. Yes, right. We will. Thank you so much, Vin.
All righty. All right. Take care, man. All right. So that was Yohann Mauger talking about developing a team culture. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for coming on.